Good afternoon. This is your Module 3 video lesson. As usual, I will be looking at both participation and assignments. So for Module 2, what you needed to do was post separate threads for internal and external, provide a communications example, use the AID framework, application and analysis, insights and information, depth and details, explanations and examples. Do not just report on a topic. Do not just quote from a source. You want to make sure that you show that you understand the concepts that are being addressed in the discussion. Use citations and references. Use textbook and business journal article. Make sure your responses are substantive. Be sure citations and references match. And focus on content, especially in the engagement postings. You want to avoid being too conversational, saying things like, I think, I believe, I feel, I like. You really want to focus on content. One of the best ways of doing that is to, in fact, use the citation and reference for your engagement postings as well as the original posting. For discussion board 3, you are going to use your selected and approved company. You're going to create 2 threads, an internal and an external one, and you're going to reply to at least one internal and one external, and one of those 2 responses can be to me. You're going to use the milestone 2 scenario, which is about poor working conditions at an overseas supplier. It has to be poor working conditions, and it has to be an overseas supplier. The scenario itself can be made up. The company that is the supplier can be made up. It doesn't have to be something that actually happened, but it does need to revolve around poor working conditions. The first thing you're going to be doing is determining the most effective communication method, which would be different for internal and external. Think about what works best, identify the target audience, and discuss and justify why you are using that specific kind of communication. You're going to determine the different needs of stakeholders. You should not be writing the same message internally and externally. Stakeholder needs are different. Things that customers want to know about are not the same thing as what suppliers want to know about. And you're going to be writing an internal and an external communication, and again, they should not be the same. It is also better if the communication is going to a specific stakeholder group. In reality, the way we are doing it for this class, the only internal stakeholders are your employees, managers, and board of directors, and if it's private owners. Everyone else is external. I know that you're going to find places with a definition where they put investors, creditors, internal. For the purposes of this class, they are all external. So for employees, it's most likely going, or internal, it's going to most likely be employees. So you would write a message, if it's an email, dear employees, or to the attention of employees. Don't write to stakeholders. That has no meaning. Be specific. If it's external, pick one group. Don't do them all unless you're doing a press release. And if you are doing a press release, I've posted a format for you. When you are looking at someone else's discussion question, you're going to be using the peer-reviewed discussion rubric, which focuses on content, not on editing. You want to make meaningful suggestions for improvement or ask appropriate questions. Comment on the key points. Be sure messages other than press releases are addressed to a specific stakeholder group. As I said, it could be dear customers, it could be dear employees, it could be dear contractors. And it has to come from a specific executive. I know in the scenario it says that you're a consultant, but it should not come from you. It should come from the CEO. And if you don't know the CEO's name and can't find it, make up a name. But it should come from a specific person. It shouldn't come from the HR department or executive team. This is just a heads up for you. In Module 5, and I will give you this heads up again next week, in Module 5, there is an initial posting due on Monday. I know that's unusual. That's why the early heads up. Milestone 2 paper. These are the elements that are in the rubric. Communication context, which is an overview of the scenario. The scenario is the external suppliers poor working conditions. Communication needs. What are the different needs of your different stakeholder groups? Then for internal communication, what type of communication are you going to do? You're going to do an email, you're going to do something in social media, you're going to do a broadcast. What are you going to do? The purpose of the communication, is it informational, educational, or persuasive? Justify that chosen strategy. Identify your target audience and explain and justify why they are the target audience, and then you're going to draft that communication. The external is the exact same, the type of communication. The purpose is informational, educational, persuasive. They do not have to be the same for internal and external. You're also going to justify your strategy, identify the target market or target audience, and be sure that unless it's a press release, it is to one or two specific groups. Explain and justify, and then draft the communication. Again, if you are using a press release, please use the format that has been posted in announcements. And finally, the last part of the paper is the conditions communication strategy, which is summarizing the paper, why the best approach was selected, and what other options you considered. In APA format, this is what I would do for headings. The first heading, I would make communication content, the next communication need. Then I would do internal communications with 3 level 2 subheadings, type and purpose, target audience, and draft. The draft can also be in the appendix, which would come after your reference page if you choose to do it that way. External communication would be the same as internal, type and purpose, target audience, draft, which can be in the paper or in the appendix. Conditions, communication strategy, and references. So those would be the headings that I would use. I have provided you in the announcement for this week a sample paper. Take a look at it. The sample paper basically gives you the header, the cover page, the headings, and it shows you how to do citations and references. All the other information is filler text. You could actually delete all the filler text and the paper is already outlined for you. Use a cover page. Use at least 3 main headings, with, as I showed you on the previous slide. Introduction is not used as a heading in APA. If you outline the paper taking each requirement as a heading, you have made sure that you have cover everything. Avoid first person, you, and contractions, double space. Be sure citations and references match. Use last name and publication date. Download date is not used in citation or references. Add page paragraph number for quotes, and use hanging indent format, which basically means the first line of your reference is in the margin and the subsequent lines are indented. Some tips on writing. Avoid superlatives. All, every, never, always, best, rarely true, difficult to prove. Avoid very. It's an unnecessary word. Avoid unnecessary adjectives like great and perfect. Watch for wordos and write clearly and concisely. Try to avoid rhetorical questions. Don't end sentences with a preposition in, on, with, for. Avoid empty phrases. Do not start any sentence with also and use also only once in a paragraph. Avoid cliches and generalities. So wordos. Wordos are words that are spelled correctly, but the wrong word, and we see them all the time. The most frequent ones I see are whether and weather, manager and manger, then and than, loose and lose. Some examples of cliches, last but not least, first and foremost, easier said and done, in this day and age, rest is history, read between the lines. Get rid of those phrases. They don't add any value to your paper at all. Unnecessary phrases, due to the fact that, could just be since, in this day and age is today, as well as just use and. When it comes to unnecessary, for all intents and purposes, and most people tend to rewrite that wrong as all intensive purposes, and in order to or in order for can just be to or for. Generalities, all over the world. How do you know? How can you prove all over the world? Everyone would agree. I can't get 10 people to agree on something. How could you get everyone in the company to agree, or everyone in the world? Company will never. You cannot predict the future. Apple is known worldwide. Probably not true. There are places that have no electricity, have never seen a computer or a smartphone. Salespeople lie to make money. That is a generality that you cannot prove and is more likely to be opinion. Everyone loves Disney. Not really. I know people who don't love Disney. I love Disney, but not everyone does. Redundant expressions, extremely unique. Something can't be more than unique. Unique means one of a kind. A necessary need, a new innovation. An innovation wouldn't be an old innovation. Past history wouldn't be future history. Two twins is really four people. And completely unanimous doesn't make sense because unanimous means everyone agrees. 4C filter, make sure you use this. Is your paper clear? Are your thoughts well organized and easy to follow? Concise. Do you make the point in as few words as possible? Do you not have long run-on sentences, sentences with too many thoughts and phrases? Cogent, is it based on evidence or sources? And comprehensive, addresses all requirements. Concise means the way you write it. Comprehensive is about content. Peer-reviewed articles, they're reviewed by experts in the field. Required review takes a lot of time, sometimes a year from writing to approval. It's based on empirical research, it's harder to read, and articles are longer. I am not requiring peer-reviewed. I am requiring business journal articles, which are easy to read, more up to date. They help you more with papers. They're accessible in the library, and they're accessible on journal websites. Some of the more popular ones, and all ones that I think are good sources, Business Week, Fast Company, Forbes, Fortune, HBR, Inc., and Wall Street Journal. HBR is the only one that is .org. The others are all .com. Best practices, use one source per paragraph or section. Paraphrase rather than quote. I said this to you last time. Read aloud before submitting. When you read aloud, you pick up on all of your mistakes that you tend not to pick up on when you read silently. Do more than report on topics. Review feedback from your first paper as well as the posting that I gave you and last week's video. And check the rubric before submitting. That was a big issue for the first paper. A lot of people did not check the rubric and left out significant portions of the paper. Review the announcement posted on 3/23, which also has in it a copy of the paper rubric, tips for writing papers, the press release format for external communication, a sample paper, and links for APA. Most of the time I am online just around 10 p.m. on Sunday to see if there are any questions, but this week I'm not sure based on my family situation that I posted in the announcement. If you have a problem, let me know immediately. In advance is a reason, after the fact is an excuse. Better to submit late than not at all, but it's also easier to keep up than to catch up. If you have questions, you can send me an email. You can post them in the general questions thread in class. And that's it for this week.